Welcome. We are here today to continue with our series on the archetypical mind. And up to date we have covered in the categories the matrix, the potentiator, the catalyst, and I believe today we are on experience. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of bring us up to date because it's been a while since we've met. And just to review what we have covered so far, the evolution is designed in order to make it possible for we who are the creator as the subject to explore the creator. And most people are under the presumption that that exploration is a haphazard exploration. But the fact is our exploration is very, very well organized and very well defined. So what we are exploring is essentially designed for us so that all that we have to do is experience what is presented to us, and in that experience we are exploring the creator. The archetypical mind is part of the design of that exploration. But before we actually get to the archetypical mind today, I want to back up and talk a little bit about the other elements that are designed for us. The most probably the most immediately identifiable aspect of creation that we participate in that is designed for us is the environment. And the environment is significant because it sets the stage. And if you think of it as a theatrical stage, the props, the stage itself, the lighting, all of that is essential in order to conduct a theatrical presentation. And essentially what we are doing in creation is creating or producing a theatrical presentation. The initial environment was the first thing in creation, which was free will. And free will was injected into intelligent infinity, which is the creator. It is the one infinite creator. Free will was the first distortion and created the first environment of creation. It is also eighth density, same thing. When you say free will and you say eighth density, there's no distinction between the two. Free will actually becomes the implementer of all of the rest of creation. Seventh density was created within the environment of eighth density. Seventh density is just another environment. It is a refinement of the eighth density environment. In seventh density, the inherent characteristics of the creator become delineated, which means love, wisdom, unity, stillness, and awareness are delineated within the refined environments of seventh density. Each of the five inherent characteristics in and of themselves become an additional sublogos, an additional sub-environment to seventh density. So love is actually an environment. Awareness is an environment for creation to be explored. This continues on down into sixth density, fifth density, fourth density, and third density, each of which is both an environment and it is consciousness that is available to experience itself. And we recognize environments more clearly by what begins. For the most part, we don't recognize that within, for example, love, raw, which is an environment, is created an infinity of environments called octaves. And each octave is a separate environment. There's an infinity of what we recognize as a universe. There's an infinite number of universes within each octave, each of which is a refinement of the environment above. And so each universe defines a different part of the creator. And that's why there are multiple universes. Each is a distinctly different environment from any other. Each galaxy within every universe, again, is another refinement of the environment. And each one is a little bit different from the next. Each solar system is a different environment within every galaxy. And so these are the environments that simply are stages. They set the stage for a certain type of experience. They in and of themselves are not consciousness. They are a thought. Every time that we think a thought, we think that we've created this wonderful thought out of our own little mind. But actually, every thought that we process, which is what the archetypical mind does, is a complete representation of the one infinite creator. And we are not able to recognize that because our consciousness is so low. But free will is one thought. Creation itself is one thought, but it's an absolutely complete thought. Each of these environments that we experience, which goes all the way down to our planet, it goes to subdivisions within our planet, all the way down to the environments that we experience as our home, as our work, as our school, each of which is a further refinement of that initial environment that we're calling free will, or eighth density. So our individual home is an environment. Our workplace is an environment. And it's designed to provide us with certain types of experiences all the way down to that level. So that's the stage that we participate in and assist in creating, but that is also part of every thought. That is a foundation within every thought, and every thought that we have, that whatever else is included in that completeness of that one thought is refined with all of these different levels, all of these different categories, going all the way down to our immediate environment that we're experiencing at this moment, for example. And that's all part of that thought. There's continuity from thought to thought because the environment is actually held in place by seventh density. We participate with seventh density. So seventh density is holding all of these thoughts in place, and the subsequent levels of consciousness that coincide with these refined environments are also assisting in holding in place the foundation for that thought, which is the environment that we experience. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions on environment? Okay.
So is a torus an environment then?
Well,
Sorry, is a what?
Torus.
yeah, yes and no. A torus, every thought, every concept requires a torus to hold it in place. So from this, yes, from the standpoint that an environment is a concept, it is a torus, but usually there are a multitude of concepts that are amalgamated in order to create an environment. So
There's multiple toruses within an environment?
yeah, there would be multiple toruses. There may be an encompassing torus. For example, eighth density is a torus within the concept of free will.
Okay, I'm sorry, but what's a torus?
A torus is it's a mathematical shape that looks like a donut
Okay.
and has a central axis.
Okay.
And it is essentially energy. It turns in two directions simultaneously. The energy at our level of consciousness causes the donut shape to turn from out in. So the energy is flowing like this on a torus in our level of consciousness. Once we achieve a level of consciousness on the Hawkins scale of 650, which means we're on the verge of transitioning between fourth density and fifth density, that is the Kundalini, and that rotational direction changes. So it begins to flow the reverse of what we experience. We are flowing in intelligent energy. And as we connect our Kundalini, then we will at that point be able to continue to connect and flow with intelligent energy, but we will also connect to intelligent infinity. So we bring a higher source of energy into our beingness.
Okay.
Okay? And there's also a central axis to that donut shape. In that central axis, the donut shape spins around that donut shape, or down around that central axis as well. And every concept has to have a torus to hold it in place. And for example, a table. A table is assembled from parts. A tabletop is one concept and would have one torus. Each leg would be one concept and have a separate torus. When you assemble the legs to the tabletop, then those individual toruses surrender their beingness to become tableness. So those 6 or however many toruses individually with the parts become one. So you have one concept of tableness with one torus.
Do the original tori, is that plural?
Yeah.
Do they cease to exist?
Yes.
Okay.
When they merge, they cease to exist. But tori don't necessarily cease to exist, as is illustrated in our mind, body, spirit. We begin as a spirit, which is a concept, with a torus. From that spirit, we create the mind, which is another concept that has its own torus. From that mind is created the body, which is another concept and another torus. So we actually are 3 concepts, spirit, mind, and body, and 3 tori that do not merge. And there's a reason, while we're on this subject, I'm glad we got to this subject because I was going to get there anyway. The 3 tori that comprise our mind, body, and spirit are actually staged. The first, and I'm terrible about drawing a torus, but we'll do it as soon as we get
Good pen.
something that writes. You get the idea.
An ugly donut.
An ugly donut. This one fell out of the fat.
T-O-R-U-S.
Each of these has a central axis that runs through it. And these central axes, whatever, are aligned. They're stacked. The first, where our energy connects to our body, is the body torus. It correlates to the first chakra. So this body torus only allows for the first chakra. The second is our mind. And it is the second and third chakra. The spirit accounts for everything else. The spirit, fourth through the 8th chakra. Our level of consciousness, by its nature, will only allow us to experience the body torus and the mind torus until such time as we raise our consciousness adequately in order to activate our spirit and to connect to the spirit. This demarcation, the line, where the axis of the first torus and the second torus meet, is the dividing line between our first and second chakra. The point at our perineum, where the bottom of this torus connects, that is where intelligent infinity that comes from our higher self, our vital energy, connects. At the bottom of this axis. The Shushima, and if you'll recall in the structure of the chakras, we have what's called a Shushima, which is life force energy that flows all the way through us without charge. There's no electrical charge, it's a neutral charge. That Shushima it coincides with the central axis of our three Tori. From the moment we are born, even before we're born, this exists in time-space as well, so we don't have to be incarnate in order to be experiencing this. The Shushima always will be flowing without electrical charge, all the way up to the 8th chakra. The 8th chakra is the point where it returns, from that point it returns to the higher self and creates a complete cycle. If we're choosing to go service to self, we by our consent or our insistence terminate that flow of energy. And we say that we're no longer going to be connected to the higher self, but we're going to be able to steal that energy. So someone in third density that is choosing to go service to self is in the process of decreasing this connection, this flow of energy. What allows us to open our additional chakras and consequently to raise our consciousness is the increased flow of intelligent energy. In other words, this is us. We are completely the creator, but our creatorness has been turned off. It's made dormant. And in order to activate that creatorness, we must energize it. We must allow the intelligent energy to flow to those parts of us that have been put in a dormant state. So when we are born, our only chakra activated and our only torus that is activated is the body torus. We're alive, that's it. It is incumbent upon us to activate through experience the second and third chakra, which allows us to energize our mind, torus, and to allow the activation of that part of our beingness. We will stay here. We will stay here for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, learning lessons of first, second, and third chakra, first, second, and third density, and only these two will be activated. We must, by surrendering our ego, by surrendering our perception of separation, and allowing intelligent energy to flow through us, which is by our consent, we begin to activate the fourth chakra. No one can do this for us. No one can say, I can activate your chakras. They cannot live your evolution for you. This must be done by us. Just because your chakras are wheeling does not mean that your chakras are open. It means that the Shushima energy is flowing to it, which it does from the day that you're born. Okay? So other than behaviorally, or talking to your higher self, there's virtually no way to know whether your heart chakra is open, or fifth chakra is open, or sixth chakra is open, other than behaviorally. Okay? So once, and on the Hawkins scale, below this point where these two axes meet is 285. In order to open your spirit and begin to use the influence from your spirit beingness, from your spirit torus, you got to achieve 285 on Hawkins scale, which is somewhere right in here. So you're going to be acting between trust and optimism, between neutrality and willingness. Neutrality, you're surrendering your ego. You have to begin to surrender your ego and become willing in order to, you have to be vulnerable, you have to open your heart in order to open your spirit torus.
Where's that line on in terms of the physical?
Well, on the Hawkins scale, it's 285.
Right there.
It's between between third and fourth chakra, and it literally is the connection point for the axis of these two tori. It's actually very mechanical.
So for a 3D entity experiencing, a true 3D entity experiencing, this is the case. So for a 6D wanderer,
Same process.
in this experience, it's the same process, but only that portion of that 6D entity that's here is going through
That's right.
that process, because
Yeah.
there is the other aspect of it that's already.
Right. But for the 3D entity going through on higher self is ourself, so relative perspective, they are there too. That's again a difficult thing for us to understand. And we talked about in the other discussion groups, in the Friday night discussion groups, there's nothing to pursue. We have it all. It's a matter of surrendering it. The more grasping that we do with an objective, the more we keep ourselves suppressed within the lower functioning of the Torah. It is a process of surrender. We're surrendering our perception of separation. We're surrendering our over-dominance of free will. So these tori don't merge. When we graduate to fourth density, these tori do merge with our three other counterparts so that we maintain a mind, body, and spirit. But they're merged with three others, so what is now a third density mind, body, and spirit becomes a fourth density mind, body, and spirit, which just simple arithmetic is 4 times the consciousness of third density. And I don't think it works that simplistically, but just as an illustration. Okay?
And I mean, and once you've surrendered the ego and you've moved to 4 density, then there is no separation, there is no veil, there's none of that.
No, your torus, your tori are still there. They
Right.
still function the same.
But it's free flowing all the way through.
It
They're all
depends on how open you are.
So
There's a process of learning in fourth density. You just don't automatically.
So you're not necessarily open in 4D. You're still going through that process as you.
You can graduate to 4D with a 400 on Hawkins scale. Okay, which means you can stay in third density up to 499 and be a third density person. So that 99 points or whatever, if you graduate to fourth density with a minimum level of 400, your first part of your tenure in fourth density is going to be the healing that you could have done in third density. But I presume that it's easier because you don't have the veil and you don't have the forget.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So we good with the torus and the mind, body, spirit? Make sense? Which is different from the environment, but it's an important part of the puzzle. The other part of the design of creation, we talked about the environment, and the environment is the stage for us to have these experiences upon. In each descending sublogos, or is a sublogos, and a refined environment to the one above it. So we are flavored by all of those step downs. We are flavored, Our experiences are flavored by our universe. They're flavored by the octave, by the universe we're in, by the galaxy that we're in.
Flavored, like influenced, is that what you mean?
Influence. It is a refinement of that environment.
Which is the same as the fractal. If it's a
It is a fractal, but it's not fractalized consciousness. It is a refinement of the environment. So, if you're an experimenter and you're saying, well, we have this, and this, and all of these are different environments, and they are going to influence our experiment differently. So it may appear to be the same environment, but say hypothetically the temperature is different from one to the next. There's a very small, minute difference from environment to environment, but that small difference becomes strategic to the outcome of the experiment. Okay? And what we're experiencing is just one environment. So we have an infinity of environments. Each one is a little bit different from the next because it is affecting the outcome of the experiment differently.
So does an archetype umbrella numerous environments, or does it create an environment?
Well, that depends, because there's the 7th density archetype, which are the 5 inherent characteristics, and then there are 32 archetypes that includes the 5 inherent characteristics, and the remaining distortions at 6th density. So each one creates a different environment according to its level of consciousness. That, okay, the other significant aspect of creation that we experience is time. And we presume, because of our level of consciousness, that we haphazardly create our life. That things just mysteriously happen, or we work really hard and we cause things to happen. And there is no cause and effect relationship in how events come to us. We have an environment, and we want to explore the Creator as completely as we can. In order to ensure that we can do that, we have to have a mechanism of creating experiences that will take place within the environment. In going back to the theatrical reference, you have to have a script. You have to have a play to be acted out within the environment that you've created. And time only occurs in 3rd density. Time does not occur in 4th, 5th, or any other density. The first 2 densities are timeless. They're just not involved with time at all. Beginning at 3rd density, we experience time. It's the only density that we are in time. And what time is the play. It's the experiences that we will encounter.
Oh, can I ask a question then?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in 4D and you're still learning the lessons that you didn't fully complete in 3D, and you go into the timelines to experience a particular section that you didn't fully experience, are you not really in time at that point then?
No. If you incarnate as a wonder, then you are in time. But if you're in 4th density and you're working with the timelines,
Right.
and how you work with the timelines, principally you are working with the Akashic record, which is the recorded aspect of the timeline.
So you're not really in time, you're kind of playing with an aspect of it.
Yes, it's right.
It's almost like what leaves behind, like an impression that's left behind.
It's like you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
You like the movie, so you go back and rewatch a movie, and you get more out of the movie than you did when you first
But
saw
that's
it.
not really time. Okay.
That's not being in time. You're just
You're just watching it.
working with it.
Gotcha.
And that's the same with 5th density as well.
It's like e-learning.
Okay. So that's what time is, but time is also thought. Because time is nothing more than a series of thoughts. We choose a timeline before we incarnate. And in that timeline are all of the major experiences of our life, including who we're going to be friends with, who we're going to marry, who we're going to divorce. All of that is included in the timeline.
And why can't we get a hold of that script?
You can, but you have to become aware. You don't get to know in advance what the script is, but you can read what you've already played.
Yeah.
The reason you don't get the advance notice on the script is that, and the reason that is a violation of the law of confusion or your free will, is the purpose of your incarnation is to uniquely interpret the experiences that are presented to you.
Well, and it would influence your experience if you know what the outcome is.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
no, he didn't start with marriage and then divorce. He just went straight to divorce.
Just go ahead and do the divorce and then we'll get married. Or decide whether we're going to get married.
Who needs the marriage? Just divorce.
Yeah. And so time is nothing more than a series of thoughts. And in every thought, when we talk about a thought being complete, in every thought is that segment of the environment. And our major experiences. And it's impossible for us to determine what is a major experience and what is a minor experience to any significant degree, because what may be a major experience to in one person's life would be a minor experience in another person's life. For example, one person may have in their timeline climbing Mount Everest. Well, to another person, that may not be in their timeline, that would be in their time dot, because they chose that and they worked on that and still could accomplish that, but it's not a defining moment as it would be if it were in your timeline. In your timeline, if it's in your timeline, you're going to experience it.
So the law of attraction only really works, I mean, as far as change manifesting, in your life, it really only works the 20 to 30% that you have that leeway outside of the script. Otherwise, the law of attraction is more just like what thought are you going to apply to the experience. But you're really not changing your experiences except by 20 to 30%.
That's right.
Okay.
But think about that also, because the timelines, the 70 to 80%, is reality. And there's virtually no pain and suffering in reality if you're able to stay in the moment and recognize only reality. That 20 to 30% doesn't seem like much, but when you consider that all pain and suffering, all of our individual stories and interpretations of life are in that 20 to 30%. From a magnitude standpoint, it's tremendous.
I'm a little lost. Can you explain again was it 70-80% reflects what, and then?
Our timelines that we choose before we're born
Okay.
constitute 70 to 80% of our experiences.
Okay.
The more unconscious that we are, the more lost in pain and suffering and low consciousness, the more towards the 70% we're going to be. Because we're fighting what is. We're battling and trying to control what is. As we raise our consciousness, become more aware, we begin to surrender that need, and so we rely on our timelines more significantly, and it provides closer to the 80% of our experiences. So someone that is choosing 30% of their life is more significantly in pain and suffering than someone who has surrendered all that and is closer to the 80%. That 20 to 30% that is the part of our life that changes really are time dots. And on average, they're 138 minutes in length. And
So the 20 to 30% is not our free will?
No.
Oh.
We use our free will to choose what time dot, to attract what time dot. Included in every time dot is an array of thoughts that are all relevant to what we are experiencing. We choose the time dot based upon our energetic balance. This is the law of attraction. This is what we're actually attracting. We attract in the time dot based upon our energetic balance a time dot that resonates with that. And included in that time dot are the thoughts. And we can choose from an array within the time dot what thought that we're going to apply to that experience, to that situation. And so, yes, we are using our free will, and we are not yet using our free will. We'll get to that in a minute. What we're doing is attracting to us the experiences and the conditions, whether we need gold fixtures in our bathroom or not, all of that is in the time dot. The timeline says, you will have a bathroom. You in the time dot say, I gotta have gold fixtures.
So going back to what we were talking about before we started all of this, or what we were talking about, and you were just kind of stuck there.
Keeping my mouth shut.
These are all time dots, and it's what I'm attracting. And I just got to figure out which condition is the one that...
In the midst of that, though, will probably be a timeline event.
Right, I realize it's stuck in there somehow, and I know that eventually, like you said, if it's in the timeline, I'm gonna be...
You're going to experience it.
Experiencing it.
Yeah.
It's just trying to figure out which dot.
But that's the interesting thing about it, because those decisions make themselves.
Yeah, you don't
If
have
it's
to-
in the timeline, the decisions make themselves. You don't have to
So I
decide.
just have to sit back and let it happen.
That's right.
You have to watch how you feel.
Frustrated.
Well, the experience is in the timeline, but still you can either, the emotions that you apply to the experience are your choice.
That is your free will. But
Right.
there are experiences in the time dots as well, because that's your story.
Right, but yeah, it's still, you can, yeah, so, I mean, and certain things in the timeline may not be seen as good, they could be,
You can see them all as bad, but that's your choice.
right?
They're just events. They're neutral.
Mhm. So it's not like our timeline is easily chosen to be good things.
What is what we can use our free will on. And really, when you think about it, choosing the time dot is not a matter of free will. That's the result of free will. We are not thinking about making a decision and then making the decision. We are making a decision, and based upon that decision, oftentimes is based upon our mind-spirit balance. And so it has consequences about what we attract. But the free will, the only thing that we really use our free will for is adjudicating whether the thought that we are processing is deserving of radiating or absorbing love energy. That is the only thing that we really use our free will for. It's the only thing we can use our free will for, which is a product of our low level of consciousness. These are the conditions that we experience in third density, and why third density is as it is. That we have a forgetting, we don't know who we are, we don't know who we were in past lives. We have a veil, so we can't easily communicate with our higher self or our unmanifest self. So we feel that we have an I perspective. We are locked within this cocooned body. We are unconscious when we begin. We begin the experience of third density in total innocence, total chaos, and in primordial darkness, which means we don't know anything. That's all primordial darkness means, is we have no information whatsoever. And it's from that absolute 0 point that we begin to have experiences. And because we begin at that absolute 0 point, we are totally unique. Totally unique. That's how our uniqueness is created, because we start from absolute 0 and we build ourselves based upon how we've interpreted the experiences that are presented to us in timelines. Going back to the 3 Tori, we will experience what we don't like as long as we remain tied to the first and the second Tori, into the mind and the body Tori. We will stay in chaos because we are attached to the physical. We perceive ourselves to be, what we see is all that we are. We perceive that there is importance to collecting things, collecting wealth, things of that nature. It's because we began in ignorance, and that is as far as we have advanced. We have not, if we are preoccupied with power and collecting wealth and subjugating others, then we have not activated our spirit being. We are still locked within our mind and our body. And we are still in that phase of experiencing only what we don't like. Okay? Make sense? Once we awaken, and awakening is that 285 transition point that we begin to open the 4th chakra. We begin to awaken our spirit being and allow our spirit being to be a participant in our life, in our decisions in life. And putting that in context to the archetypical mind, and I want to go back and preface again what the archetypical mind is. The archetypical mind is divided into mind, body, and spirit. The mind is spirit with an extra dose of free will, which means it gets its own torus, its own concept. Because we perceive ourselves as separate from the Creator, that is our ego, same thing as our ego, that is our decider. That chooses how we're going to live our life. And until we open the heart chakra, until we move into our spirit being, our mind is only receiving influence from the body, survival. So our power and self-esteem chakras are receiving input from the body, and we're just cycling in pain and suffering. That is the cycle of samsara, as the Buddha called it. And we repeat that over and over and over until we decide, I don't like that, and I want something more. Then we surrender our ego and allow ourselves to become willing.
So do we have to be at 285?
Huh?
Do we have to be at consciousness 285 or higher to have input from the spirit at all?
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before, but we can vacillate, right? I mean, we can be at 300 a little bit. I mean, you're going to have a...
It's not a smooth transition. You just don't all of a sudden click over and no longer ever have a negative thought.
So we can fluctuate.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think of it as a cycle, and the cycle is dipping a little bit and going ahead a little bit and dipping a little bit, we're learning.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, that makes sense that it would be at willingness, or kind of in between neutrality and willingness, because so much of the time they say you just have to be willing. So if you can get yourself into that space of being willing,
But what do you
then it comes.
think about neutrality? You're burned out at neutrality. You're tired of experiencing what you don't like. So yeah, you're neutral, you're no longer committed, you don't know the way things are.
Yeah.
Because you're in such pain and suffering. So you become willing to consider alternatives. And begin with willingness to, what you're becoming willing to do is surrender the dogmatic behavior of your ego. You're willing to begin to open, to become a little bit vulnerable. And certainly, the more open that you become, and you see you haven't died yet, the more willing you're going to be to open a little bit more.
So could we say that really, like in Hawkins' work, I think he drew the line at 200 or 250, really the difference between power and force is at 285, maybe?
He defined 200 as integrity, as courage. You're still experiencing pain and suffering, but you're no longer lost in the lower vibrational emotions. And that's just, 200 is right below the neutrality step. So you're bolstering courage to be more aware and to begin to look inside, and then you realize, I don't like this. I don't like constant pain and suffering. So you get burned out and you become neutral. You're willing to consider other options.
I guess that's the midway point that we talked about between moving, like, force really isn't doing it for you anymore, but you're not that familiar
You haven't let
with
go.
power.
Right.
So you're in that middle point, and
That's where you feel the impatience.
that's where the, willing,
Acceptance begins at 350 is when you're surrendering to the point that you're accepting to power. You allow your need for control to go away. And you begin to experience power because you've surrendered your ego.
It's like you have your ego like dangling over the cliff, and you're like, I'm gonna do it now.
It's like your ego is first base and you got to make it to second base, and your arm only stretches so far, and then you got to let go and
And keep
run
on
to
looking
second
at that
base.
picture, like, can I run?
That's right.
Which is when you become vulnerable, because you step off that plate and become vulnerable for a bit.
Exactly right.
And then at some point you go, F it. And you go.
That's right.
Oh, come on, you can say it.
Well, only because we're on video.
We're on video.
All right, I have a question that I'm not sure if you're ready for it now, because back in February, when I asked it, you said to wait, to save it for a later discussion. And I'm hoping that now is the right
This is a
time.
later discussion.
Because we're talking about, you had said at one time that opportunities are never lost. As if it's meant to be, it will come back again and again. And you were saying that if it's in your timeline, you're going to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote, if it's truly meant to be, all will fall into place for it to happen. So my question was, is this an example of the spirit actually being heard by the mind? And you said, that's a very good question, but ask it later.
Well, yes, when you open the spirit portion of your beingness, that most definitely is the spirit being heard by the mind. That's what happened at 285. That's what happens on the archetypical mind. Up until 285, the mind is only considering input from the body, which is not intelligent, and using its own ego to make all the decisions in your life. Okay? So it's not aware. It's reacting to life. And as you open the spirit, then the mind, what is opening is the mind is willing to receive input from the spirit. And so you move out of the attachment to the physical and you move more towards the spirit, because the spirit immediately begins to provide you with experiences that you like. So you begin to gravitate to what you like as opposed to what you have learned that you don't like.
Okay. is that where sort of the law of attraction comes in then? Because you are experiencing
Well,
more
that's-
what you like, so then you're attracting the
Yes,
stuff
but the
that-
law of attraction is working all before then too.
Right.
Because your vibration is so low, you're attracting exactly what you are resonating.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time matching with the timeline thing too.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I can't quite articulate it.
Right, exactly what you said.
I can't articulate it, but it's like, where does that come in with all of, 70 to 80% of events or experiences are already going to happen?
As I said, it's difficult for us to distinguish what is in the timeline as opposed to what's in the time dot, because with different people, what may be in a timeline for one will be in a time dot for another one. But things like the people that have been in your life as friends, we share timelines with our soul group. We don't just, it's not haphazard that these timelines are just interweaving. We choose, like we're producing a play. And with this segment of the play that we're in, this part of the play, and we'll have, you played this role, and you played this role, and you played this role, and they are planned so that when you're in kindergarten, and out of 30 kids in your kindergarten class, and you gravitate to be friends with one. Well, the reason you gravitated to that one is not because they gave you their pudding, it's because that person is in your timeline, and you were supposed to be friends providing each other with lessons at that level. The same is true, everybody that you've been friends with throughout the rest of your school years, adult life, people that come into our life are planned to come into our life.
Right, I get that.
Well, I think
And they tend to come into our lives when we need whatever that lesson or that.
You're following a
Experience.
script, so
Right.
when you need it is when they're going to appear,
Right.
but it's in the script when you're probably going to need it.
Right.
Now the script can be varied, and how the script is varied is with wanderers that are a write-in, because wanderers don't follow, they're not confined to a timeline.
Well, but
What?
why does it feel like some of the wanderers are attached to a timeline?
Well, because you're in third density, and your perceptions are third density perceptions.
And your veil.
So there's not a timeline for one of the
There is a timeline, but there's flexibility in a wanderer's timeline. Wanderers can skip timelines.
Well, that makes sense.
Central casting, the third density
No.
beings that are here is central casting, can jump from timeline to timeline. A third density being that is a graduation candidate, hasn't graduated yet, will not jump timelines. They'll stay in the
How the heck
same
do you
timeline.
know if you're jumping a timeline or not?
You don't need to, I guess.
You don't need to.
Yeah, I just need to sit back and do nothing and let it happen and just experience.
You need to be aware, and you need to experience. Anything other than that, you're creating stories and perpetuating your pain and suffering.
Well, and I think, and you were asking about the law of attraction. I mean, the law of attraction is in place from pretty much the point that you're coming to this existence, because you're
Day one.
attracting the
Right,
type of experiences that you need to have. And then when you become aware,
right.
then your
Yeah.
ability to
Right. In the beginning, you
utilize
just-
the
you can
law of
drive-
attraction is slightly different, because
Well,
you have that
you
awareness.
change the nature of the attraction because
Right.
you become aware, you open your spirit, you're a completely different vibration than you were below when
Right.
you opened that spirit portion of
And
your
you're
being.
focusing more on what you like versus all the other
That's right,
stuff.
Yeah.
All the other pain and suffering stuff.
that's right.
You're just supposed to give me more answers than you're giving me.
The more questions that come up.
I cannot make decisions
I
for you.
know.
I can cause you to be aware of the decision, the breadth of the decisions to be made.
You
But
can't
some
walk
of
you
it's
through the law of
just-
confusion.
Some of it is just more confusing than, I don't know.
That's
because you don't trust the plan.
And it's actually not the plan, it's you.
What's
It's not a matter of trusting the plan.
Well,
It's
It's
not a
because
matter-
you're the
yourself.
one who comes up with the plan, so you're not trusting you in the plan that you've made for yourself.
Well, it's,
You and your higher self.
yeah, but it's trusting yourself, and that
That's
was
true.
the analogy that I made with Brittany that she talked about a couple of weeks ago, is the bird that's sitting on the branch, that's a tenuous branch, is not afraid of sitting on the branch because it has confidence in its ability, regardless whether the branch breaks or not.
Right.
So is the higher self the wings? Or what would you equate the higher self with in that case?
Well, from a Zen or Taoist perspective, there's no difference between you and your higher self other than the awareness. So you are complete. You are completely enlightened. You are your higher self, and it's only your perception that there is separation. So there's nothing to grasp. There's nothing to try for. The more you grasp, the more that you try for, the more you separate yourself by reinforcing that perception of separation from your goal.
The more you doubt, the more you overanalyze, the more you separate yourself.
That's right. And the more you in pain and suffering that you stay.
Death spiral.
It's overthinker.
I am much better than I used to be, thank you very much.
Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure about that, but okay.
No, I get it. I don't like the answer, but I get it.
Okay. Now the part that the archetypical mind, we have the environment, we have the stage, we have the script in the form of time. The agent of change that actually experiences us, the only agent of change in all of creation is us. We are the only thing that experiences all of this menagerie that has been created for us. And we're the only thing that can change as a result, or not change as a result of what we experience from these environment and the timelines.
And when you say we're the only thing that can change, you mean according to our level of consciousness, our level of awareness?
We're the only thing that can change. All of those are variables. No matter what level of consciousness we are in, we are the only thing that can change.
Okay, well then, and what within us is supposed to change then?
Consciousness, our awareness.
Well, I just said that, and you said no.
No, I didn't say no. We are the only thing that can change. The environment is not going to change. The timelines or time is not going to change. Those things are created to allow us to have certain experiences so that we can change. And as we change, the Creator learns of itself. And that's another reason why we are totally unique. We start from absolute zero, build our uniqueness. In the process, we are changing. But what we are doing as we create our uniqueness is we are relearning what we forgot. We are relearning our creatorness from our totally unique perspective. And our total uniqueness is because we started from scratch at absolute zero. But it has nothing to do with the intellectual process. It has all to do with feeling. So the archetypical mind, again, the archetypical mind is a specific design incorporating all of the archetypes that are used to comprise the octave that we experience. In our octave, there are 9 archetypes that are used. The 5 inherent characteristics: love, wisdom, unity, stillness, and awareness, plus 4 distortions. Free will, because free will is pervasive to creation. Everything is within free will. Da, which is movement, Ta, which is separation, and Lucifer, that is unconsciousness. And all of the archetypes of the archetypical mind are made from these 9 archetypes of the Creator. And the process begins, we begin with every thought that we process, which means every moment in time, which is a thought, is the processing of, or movement in time. Movement in time is a thought. Every time we have a thought, time moves forward. We can only process one thought at a time, and it moves, is processed as a result of the speed of light, which monitors how quickly we will move through time. Other experiences have a different speed of light. Light is not a constant. Light is a constant within a range that we experience. Even within our experience, light is a range. When light is a means of monitoring and regulating the consciousness level of our part of creation, our octave. When the speed of light is increased, consciousness goes up. When the speed of light goes down, consciousness goes down. And science can monitor the variance in the speed of light. And there's a department of I think the English government is where they maintain it, that they monitor the speed of light.
So if we go somewhere with faster speed of light, we'll raise our consciousness faster?
It's entirely, well, it's an entirely different experience. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll raise our consciousness faster, but it's an entirely different experience. But everything else will change too. If you go to another octave, then the environments are going to be different. You know, the timelines are going to be different. The archetypical mind is going to be different. Everything's going to be different.
Experience would be different.
Yeah. In World War II, when the Nazis were doing their thing, the collective consciousness of the planet dropped. So did the speed of light. And the science documented the drop in the speed of light.
So if people measure the speed of light, they can see the fluctuations of issues going on
In consciousness.
in consciousness.
But how is that working? I mean, you said there's a group in,
Apparently it's doing pretty good.
I guess, you said in the UK?
I think that's where they monitor it. They
So
maintain it.
they're obviously looking at light in the UK. Is
No,
that,
it's worldwide. That's just where they consolidate the information.
so is there an assumption that light might be moving differently in different regions?
No, I don't think that that's the assumption.
Okay.
It's
So
an
there's,
astrological measurement that they do. I don't.
okay, astrological, yeah. So if we were to go on the internet, we might be able to get access to those numbers.
Yeah, which you can.
I'll ask Siri.
Okay. So the archetypical mind, what the archetypical mind does is it shapes we who are the agent of change in a certain way, so that when we experience time and when we experience the environment, we will all process that information in a certain way. An archetypical mind is designed for third, fourth, and fifth density. They're all under the same archetypical mind, the experiential densities, for the entire solar system.
Okay, so even though, wait, let me make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. So even though we are the only thing that is the agent of change because of our level of consciousness or awareness, the archetypical mind is going to shape us by the fact that we will, because of it, we will all process information exactly the same. It's just a matter of our level of consciousness or awareness as to what we take in or what we hear or what we hang on to.
Exactly so. If you think of the archetypical mind as a spacesuit, that you're completely within this spacesuit, and you can experience nothing other than through this spacesuit. And that's what the archetypical mind does. We can experience nothing it has to be in the thought form for us. And we can experience nothing that does not follow this design of the archetypical mind, because that is our spacesuit.
Which is why when you are in, we'll say, a classroom, and we'll say a general classroom, and it's not all, and we're not talking about archetypical mind, say in just any college classroom,
Okay?
and the professor is giving his lecture and telling what they need to do, that lesson for the day, everyone in that auditorium is going to grasp things in a different way, even though they're all processing it the same way. But they're going to grasp or hear or take home. It's all going to be a little bit slightly different because of their difference in level of consciousness or
Right.
awareness. Okay.
Right. The archetypical mind is going to be the same for everybody in that classroom, but their ability, their capacity to see the fullness of the Creator in those thoughts is going to differ. Okay? Now, moving on with the archetypical mind, we have covered so far the matrix, and the potentiator, and the catalyst. And we have these same features for mind and body and spirit. We'll just call that pi. The matrix and the potentiator shape us. We who are inside of this spacesuit. If we're beginning from scratch, we've never processed a thought, we've never had an experience before, we're going to have a mind that is in constant motion. We're going to have a body that is in constant motion, and we're going to have a spirit that is in primordial darkness, that knows nothing. So we're going to be in chaos. But of course, we've had lots of experiences by now, and so we have a particular characterization to who we are. We've shaped ourselves into a significant personality. In the matrix and the potentiator are going to prepare us after each thought before we process the next thought according to how we've changed. In other words, if you remember, we talked about all of creation. After one person processes one thought, all of creation stops and is reformed before anybody has another thought. Remember we talked about that? Okay. Well, what is happening, the reason that is that all is one. So if one part of creation changes, all of creation changes. So say we've processed a thought all the way through the archetypical mind, and we have the fruit of that thought. Before an individual person attracts the next thought, the fruit of the last thought is incorporated into the matrix and the potentiator, who we are. So we have been changed as a result of how we process that last thought.
I'm constantly like recalibrated.
Every time we think a thought, it's recalibrated. Constantly. So when we think about change and are we changing, we change with every thought. We can change significantly or we can change minimally. In other words, we can have an epiphany and change a lot. Or we can just, remain unconscious and kind of do a doldrum through life without being aware of any change at all. But we're still going to be changing. The catalyst, and this coincides to first density, potentiator coincides with second density, catalyst coincides with third density. Catalyst is that part of the timeline that brings us experience. This, for the sake of understanding, is the actual event or the portion of the event that we are experiencing as the timeline or the time dot. This is the event. It's absolutely neutral. Has no charge on it whatsoever. From the catalyst, once we've chosen that, and here again, the characteristic of this is pain and suffering. The mind. So we're going to choose the pain and suffering, because we're still in third density. We're going to consult the body if our consciousness level is below 285. And the body is going to tell us what sensory data goes with this. Remember, we talked about symbols being sensory data and words being sensory data. So we're going to consult with the body, and the body is going to tell us, it's going to choose what symbols we're going to use to interpret this. And so it sends the symbols, but it doesn't choose them. It just determines what is available. The mind is going to choose what symbols we're going to use. For example, touch, say hot, or...
Right, the mind, yeah. The mind chooses.
Yeah, mind chooses. The body doesn't choose. The body detects. The body detects heat, or it detects cold, or rough, or smooth, or whatever. The body just chooses the sensory data without, or it absolutely just detects the sensory data without choosing the sensory data. And reports that to the mind. And the mind shapes the catalyst according to the input from the body. Once we have awakened the spirit, okay, the mind, and the reason that our mind, body, spirit is written this way is because that's the way we evolve. Even though we have the stacking of the torus is body, mind, spirit, the way we experience it is the mind pulls the body, and the body reports back to the mind until such time as we awaken our spirit beingness, and then the mind pushes through to recognize input from the spirit. And the spirit is faith and hope of catalyst. The catalyst is faith and hope. Which means that we've begun to surrender our ego and rely on faith, what we can't attach to the physical or identify. So the catalyst has this input. If we're in lower consciousness, only the sensory data input. If we have opened the spirit, then it relies upon the spirit to give it relief and faith and hope to come back. And then the catalyst passes the results of that on to experience. Now remember, all of this is taking place in time-space. Nothing has happened in space-time yet. So none of this is in our physical awareness. And this is one thought that we're processing. Experience is the emotion. The experience of the mind is emotion. So we're going to attach an emotion to the results of what the catalyst has passed to us. that it is accumulated from the body and the spirit. So we determine emotion, but before it determines what the emotion is, experience pulls the body. And the experience of the body is actually choosing the physical catalyst, the physical sensations. So if catalyst of the body reports to the mind that, well, there's heat that's available, it's a rough texture, it's black, it's, whatever, and it's reported to that, well, this is where it's actually chosen. I'll choose to recognize if this is all that's reporting back to the mind, in other words, we remain in low consciousness, and the mind is polling the body for the input, the body is going to say it's hot, and it's rough textured, it's not pleasant. It's going to report that condition back to the mind, and the mind is going to be using that as partial determination for selecting the emotion to determine how to experience that. The rough summary may be, I don't like that. But it may be, I don't, when you break it down, so I don't like black, I don't like rough texture, I don't like hot. And all of that goes into the summary emotion of disapproval of some means. Could be fear. The vibrational level, how intense this is, determines what emotion we're going to apply to that catalyst. So we've been shaped, if we've been shaped to function from a level of fear, or fear, we're going to be predisposed to interpret all of that as a reinforcement of our fears, so we're probably going to use fear to interpret this particular catalyst that we're experiencing. You have a frown on your face there.
I'm not understanding, but so give me a something that the body would. What would the body experience as? I'm not sure how fear, like that level of the consciousness, affects how the mind will interpret
Walking
it.
on burning coals.
That's nice.
Okay, so walking on.
There are people that can walk
Right.
on burning coals without being burned.
But they connect to spirit, they're not just staying in the mind body.
Right, so there's no judgment at the catalyst level, it's
Not able to judge.
Neutral.
yeah, it's neutral. There are these coals and the body is experiencing it, and the mind is also, not say experiencing it, but there's input from the catalyst of the body and the spirit. And then when the body, the experience of the body kicks in, that's where it says, I don't like this. Is that the...
Well, it chooses the emotion that is an unpleasant emotion, which is nothing more than a vibrational level. So if it chooses this level of vibration, we're going to call it fear, because it's vibrating at the level of fear.
Okay.
Again, we're putting symbols to things that aren't symbolic.
Mm-hmm. I get it as a big cloud, but I generally grasp it, but I'm having trouble.
We'll talk through the hot
Defining.
coals example.
Okay.
Well, okay, the catalyst is you've gone someplace, you're gonna walk over these hot coals. You put your foot down on the hot coal.
Well, you're going to be fearing before. If you're at a level of fear,
I know, but you were talking about black and hot and uneven, so that's I was going with the body's. Well, I guess you're thinking ahead that there's
you're
going
going to be predisposing that it's going to be, you're afraid of it before you ever get there.
Well, where's predisposing happening?
It's not in this. You're processing many thoughts.
Right.
Okay, so before you ever get to the hot and the coals and the burning kind of stuff, you're already anticipating that and you're fearful of that.
Okay.
So you're predisposed to that already.
because of your baggage or experiences, etc.
you're conditioned to that.
But isn't that you're vibrating at that because that's at the vibration of the total mind, body, spirit complex?
Sure.
Is that-
But at that point, what we're talking about is the spirit's not a consideration.
Right.
It's only the mind and body. Mind and body is telling you, it's coming from a place of fear, so you're conditioned to be in fear. So you get catalyst, and you're predisposed to already being in fear.
Mhm.
Catalyst being faith and hope, you're not even tying into that. And what is this is information. Okay, so you're not getting information. The matrix is our innocence, and we're reducing innocence with every thought we process, theoretically.
We're
getting
reducing it?
Huh?
We're reducing it?
Reducing innocence, yes.
Because you're in primordial.
When you open the spirit, with every thought you process, gives you light, gives you information. And it's with light and information that we build confidence, we build experience and maturity.
Okay.
Okay, so that reduces our innocence. As soon as we open the spirit with light, this is faith and hope. We're more willing to be hopeful and to have faith. The more confidence that we have, we get confidence from information and light. If we're going into this walking on coals for the first time, we've never seen it before, and we see the hot burning coals, and we don't have any background in it at all, undoubtedly we're going to be have a few trepidations about walking on it until we gain light. We see other people do it. We talk to other people. They say, it doesn't burn.
Well, so if I had never seen coals before and nobody had told me that they were hot,
Well, then you walk up and touch them. But I'm presuming that, in my explanation, I'm assuming you've seen coals, you've just not seen anybody walk on coals.
That's an interesting thought.
right, I mean, if I didn't make the distinction that they were, if I didn't apply anything because I've never seen them before, I guess I'd still experience them.
You'd still experience it. What does a kid do? They walk up and touch a hot stove and they burn their hand.
Yeah.
They've never seen it before, but they've got a lot of light after they do it for the first time.
Yeah, so you don't need a story about coals to feel hot. There are certain reactions, I guess, within this density that just happen.
Mhm.
So it's not like you're hot just because you have a story about it. It's like
While I was out of the room, did you mention what the experience is under spirit?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's where we're headed.
Just making sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay, spirit, the experience under spirit, once we've opened our spirit beingness, opened our fourth heart chakra, this is the beginning of surrender. This is surrender of our ego. This is surrender of our perception of separation. And that occurs as a result of the faith that we've developed in the catalyst, which materializes as a result of the light and the confidence that we've built, information that we've built here. And we've processed the thought, numerous thoughts, so all of this is adding back into the matrix and changing our innocence. So we become more mature, more erudite. So this becomes our new platform to process the next thought.
Okay, I have a question. So I would assume that this is all incremental?
Sure, so one thought at a time.
Okay.
You do
And so
roughly
that's-
1,500 thoughts every 138 minutes.
And I'm sure women do even more.
Thought is double.
I was gonna say, I'm sure women do even more than men, but, so because it's incremental, does that mean that we can fluctuate between, once we start opening up, we can fluctuate between, utilizing the spirit versus utilizing the mind?
No,
No?
the mind
It's
is
all or
always
nothing.
going to be the portion that chooses.
Okay.
in the experiential densities.
But it's
Okay,
choosing
but-
based on whether it gets any input from the spirit or not.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm asking is, depending on our awareness level or consciousness level, we can begin to at least occasionally be aware and open to utilize this, to listen to the spirit versus.
Once you've opened your spirit, once you've opened your heart chakra.
Okay,
Until you do, you will not.
but are you saying that weren't you saying earlier that at third density we're not doing that? That that's not,
For the most part, we're not, but we have that capacity to do that.
okay, well, how do you know, I guess is what I'm asking, if you are able to do that or not?
Through
Even
your,
sometimes.
through your behavior.
Primarily through your behavior. Are
So-
you beginning to be loving? Is someone being loving? Are they demonstrating compassion for others? Are they demonstrating confidence? Are they trapped? Are they locked in these emotions? Are they locked in pride and anger and desire? If they're demonstrating only these, then they're not, the heart chakra is not open.
Okay.
If their primary concern is their own survival or the survival of family and themselves, without consideration really of anything else, they don't really, if they're utilizing the perception of empire or the concept of empire, that they can be enhanced by reducing someone else or injuring someone else, then no, their spirit's not even open yet.
You know, it's interesting that with each thought, it moves us up, for lack of a better word. But at the same time, kind of releasing thought also is a great thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's both. It's like, well,
It's not so much releasing thought as you change the nature of the thought, because we have to process thoughts to stay in time.
Well, like, well, okay, so what about,
But we
I
can
guess even in meditation, you have thoughts, but I'm thinking particularly in meditation where you can go with the space between thoughts and how
Mhm.
healing that is.
But there's still thought there.
But you don't have to
Okay.
do 1,500 every 138 minutes.
No,
No,
I'm
but-
just saying it's interesting
No, I'm
that,
talking about what he said.
Yeah.
yeah,
You can slow down the number of thoughts and still be in time.
What you were talking about doing, what you're doing is, and when we're talking about thought as a generalization, and there's thought of the ego mind, which is the discursive thought, the stuff that we're doing right now all the time.
mhm,
And that's 1,500 every 138 minutes. But also what's going on is thoughts in the deep mind,
which is more, feels like more the experience with the spirit.
which is what you tap into
Yeah.
when you go into meditation and you open, what you're opening the gap to expose is the deep mind.
Yeah.
That's what you're experiencing. So there's still thought there,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
right.
deep mind thought as opposed to discursive ego mind thought.
Yeah,
And in that deep mind thought is where the direct experience of awareness is.
and the processing of those thoughts are really powerful.
Well, yeah, and it's a whole different experience.
Mhm.
That is direct experience with the Creator. And it is a feeling, it is beyond symbols, so there's usually no words that go with that. And really no sensory, you're devoid of sensory input. You're feeling, but it's not sensory input that you're feeling. And that's the direct experience of the Creator as awareness in deep thought.
Okay, that was a good distinction.
Okay?
Mhm.
So in going back, the parts of the archetypical mind that represent these, this is begins, if you remember, we begin our experience while we remain attached to the physical, while we remain in the body and the mind, torus. Okay, we haven't opened the heart yet. Then we are experiencing here only ta, which is separation. And our mind is making our choices from the archetypical perception of separation, from a distortion While we remain in lower consciousness, this is also tall. Separation. So our whole interpretation, emotional interpretation of the catalyst is from the perspective of separation. This is Da, movement. So we are in chaos, chaos, chaos. Separation, separation, chaos. Until we begin to open our heart chakra. Until we begin to open our spirit portion. When we do that, then the object that we begin with, which is tall, shifts to wisdom. And we transform from interpreting our experiences from a distortion perception to that of wisdom, an inherent characteristic of the Creator. This transforms to Saw, awareness. So we transform Ta to Saw. They swap places. This begins with the object as Ta and the subject as Law. As we raise our consciousness and open our spirit, those two positions flip. Wisdom becomes the object and Ta becomes the subject. In other words, Ta becomes subordinate to wisdom. Same thing here. This becomes subordinate to awareness. Ta becomes subordinate to awareness. This becomes wisdom. We transform movement into wisdom as we raise our consciousness. So the experience begins, all three experience categories begin as a distortion. And as we raise our consciousness, it transforms. In order to transform that ego mind so we can graduate to fourth density, we transform those to inherent characteristics. So transformationally, as we raise our consciousness, not only do we incorporate the input from spirit and open spirit, but we're continuing to transform our perception from interpretation from a distortion perception to interpretation from an inherent characteristic perspective. So change is dramatic in the experiential category alone. And below these levels, these levels, the lower four in each of the three categories of the archetypical mind, are the only places where distortions are located. They're incorporated in the archetype. From experience, the significator and above, only inherent characteristics are part of the archetypical mind. So, for the most part, we have one more category that is involved in the processing of a thought in third density. The other top two categories, the transformation and the great way, the thought goes through them, but they contribute nothing that we can recognize because of our limitations in third density. Transformation is a fourth density and fifth density consideration, and great way likewise. Great way creates the atmosphere for all of these to function within. That all of our distortions are tied to lower consciousness in third density. Okay? Any questions? You good? Okay. And that's all I've got for today. That's all?
Thank you.
That's it.
Yes, thank you.
What?
Mine,
More.
Yeah. I'm still chewing.
yeah.